This week on the Orange Box podcast, we talk about Shuhei Yoshida leaving PlayStation, Sony working on a portable PS5, GOG's preservation program, and more. All of this tonight, but first, on to that beautiful bean intro. Welcome to the place where PC and console gaming talk combine. This is the Orange Box Podcast, episode 60. I am your host, the man who is on the road to Orlando, Nathan, also known as the Frozen Gamer 87. And joining me, as always, the man who is the body model for 2B in Rainbow Six Siege, Justin, better known as I Am Zeracon. How you doing today? How's your week been?
Oh man. My week, not really too much. It hasn't been really all that eventful. Still trying to fight what remnant of the code I have. Some days have been better than others, but just mostly like nights. It's just been hard to sleep as a result of it. But I'm hoping that I can kick the rest of it out of the way soon enough. But other than that, oh wait, no, there's one thing though. Oh man, what was it? There was something that was. There was some interesting tidbit, but Anyway, so like tomorrow, of course, is Thanksgiving. Going to be going to my sister's and her family for dinner, but I'm gonna be making some mashed potatoes and gravy to bring over. So I'll be making that, working on making that tomorrow morning before I head on over. But yeah, not really a whole lot that's been going on, I'll say.
Well, I wish I could say the same. It's been a crazy week. I won't bore you with all the details, but basically just Saturday ended up being super busy. Well, I should say, so there's Thursday. I guess, let me back up. I didn't end up really getting all that sick. It basically just, it didn't really change. Like, it was just irritation in my throat for a few days, and that was really it. There was nothing else to it, so that was nice. But Thursday was busy. Friday was pretty busy. Saturday was very busy, including practice that we had for Sunday. Sunday was going to be a rest day, but it didn't work out because there was stuff that I had to get done. And so, like, a couple of those things being I needed to pick up stuff we needed for Thanksgiving since we're hosting. And I needed to grind up both 5 pounds of chicken thighs and like an 8-pound or 9-pound pork shoulder roast, both of which to make sausage. But mostly because I needed to get them out of the fridge so that I'd have room to put the turkey in there to defrost. And so between those things and several other things, I just basically didn't get to relax at all over the weekend. And so Monday after work, I didn't do much of anything. I just basically forced myself to do nothing. So there was that. And then Tuesday and today were both very, very busy for pretty much the whole time. Part of what I had to do was fixing the smoker. So initially I thought that it was just a matter of that the auger was clogged, but it wasn't. Turns out that the problem was actually that I needed that, or at least I thought I needed a new motor for the auger, so which spins so it feeds the pellets into the basin so that it ignites and then heats up the whole thing and does the smoking process. But when I got the auger, the motor, I decided to also pick up a replacement for my igniter because my igniter hasn't been working for a while. And so I got the thing flipped over and taken apart as much as it needed to be in order to replace the pieces. The motor I ended up spending a lot of time on, and it turns out that the motor wasn't even broken. The motor was fine. I was trying to get it separated from the auger, but it was like a pain. I spent way too much time trying to figure out how to get that off. And it turned out that, well, for one, I just couldn't quite get it off because my tools just weren't small enough. And anyway, but I plugged it back in and just tested it, plugged into the smoker, and it was working just fine. So it's like, okay, so I guess the motor wasn't broken. The igniter, though, I knew was working again, so it's like, okay, great. I got my igniter fixed. Everything's working. And then after I've replaced all the smoker chips, because you basically have to dump everything out from it in order to work on it, because otherwise they just spill all over the place. Then I mean, like, the igniter was working, but for some reason it wasn't getting hotter. The heat wasn't spreading throughout the pellets. It wasn't staying ignited. I tried initially just like igniting with my blowtorch because I had to do that for a while now because of the fact that the igniter wasn't working. And thought, okay, well, maybe if I can get it going, then it'll be fine. That wasn't fixing the problem. So I thought, okay, well, maybe the problem is that these chips that I have in there have too much sawdust. Too much of the chips have broken up, and so it's just not able to really ignite that. But, I mean, that didn't make a whole lot of sense to me, but I couldn't figure out what else it would be. So I tried, so I was going to, so first I emptied out the existing pellets and scooped out as best as I could what was left of the sawdust from that. And in doing so, I thought maybe this would fix the problem, but it didn't. Still continue to have the same problems. I put a whole fresh bag of pellets in there. So I thought about it some more, and I realized, I haven't heard the, I can't think of the word. It's a fan that helps push the air around. Gosh, for some reason, like, I'm blanking on what it is. I know it'll probably come to me in the middle of the podcast, and then I'll just shout it out. But anyway, gosh, that's really bothering me. Anyway, so this fan is what normally it pushes the heat around from the igniter, after it ignites the pellets, which helps once you get that airflow, that helps to ignite the rest of the pellets and helps to keep the whole thing going, helps it to warm up and everything else and start getting up to temperature. But I knew that hadn't been a problem before, so I wasn't really sure what was going on. So I emptied it out again, flipped it over, and I checked the fan, and it turns out that when I had put the parts back in, some of the wires that had been attached to both the igniter, well, really, I think it was really just the igniter, they had not been pushed down far enough, and so they were keeping the fan from spinning. And so once I pushed those down, tested it again, the fan started spinning, everything started sounding normal. Now it's working. So was able to get the bacon smoked that I needed to get smoked, which was just, in general, this is, something I do somewhat regularly, both for men's breakfast we do on Tuesdays and just for our use as well. Plus I needed some for cornbread stuffing I'm making for tomorrow, one of the multiple things I'm making. So, got that working, got the turkey more or less ready at this point, other than being stuffed and smoked. Probably add a little bit of extra seasoning, but I'm doing a dry brine on it because I found that, I've done wet brine many times in the past, and the wet brine's good, but it's really messy, and the skin ends up being kind of like, I guess, rubbery. Maybe not rubbery, but it doesn't get crispy when you do the wet brine. So it adds a lot of flavor, but the dry brine is so much better, and it's way less messy, and it only has one ingredient. It's just salt. You do 1 tablespoon of salt for every 3 pounds of turkey, and you just rub it on the outside of the skin, stick it in the fridge 24 to 48 hours. That helps to dry out the skin a bit. The seasoning not only seasons the skin and helps it to crisp up, but it also seeps through and gets to the meat. And it tastes just as good as doing the fancy brine that I've done before. So it's like, hey, I'm going to do that instead. And then got various other things prepped. So, of course, I had mentioned the pork sausage being one of the things that I had to prepare, because for both Thanksgiving and Christmas morning, and I've told you about these before, we make crescent rolls stuffed with sausage and cream cheese. And so this time we're doing them with homemade sausage and homemade crescent rolls. So we'll see. I mean, last time we tried making homemade crescent rolls, they didn't come out very well. We're hoping this time it will be better. But we'll find out tomorrow for sure, one way or the other. But so there was that. My wife also, one of the things that we make as like an appetizer throughout the day, a recipe we got from a friend, same friend who gave us the idea for the sausage crescent rolls, is a feta artichoke dip. And part of that involves having mayo. I mean, there's like, it's just one of many ingredients in there, but we were out of homemade mayo, so I had to make some more of that. And I'm going to be doing mashed potatoes, which I'm going to try doing something a bit different this time. Well, for one, I'm doing it with red potatoes, which I think red potatoes are great for mashed potatoes anyway, with the skin. But the main thing I'm doing differently this time is normally when I do like breakfast potatoes for the men's breakfast thing, I season them a specific way, and I do red potatoes a lot of the times. So I'm doing the same seasonings, but making mashed potatoes instead of chopped and fried. So I think it will be really good. It's got like rosemary and paprika and onion powder and garlic powder and Italian seasoning and cayenne and crushed red pepper. I think that's basically everything. But yeah, they're really good for that, so I think it'll work well for mashed potatoes. And we'll stuff the turkey with typical stuffing. We're just doing stovetop for that. And then I'm making cornbread stuffing, which will have some of the homemade bacon in it, and peppers and onions and celery and chicken broth. And I haven't figured out exactly how I'm going to make it. I kind of fake it each year, but I think I have an idea of how to make it better than it's been before. So hopefully it will turn out really good. And, my wife made a homemade pumpkin pie, which the first time we'd done that, or maybe the second time, but it's the first time we've done it where it was specifically made to be alpha-gal friendly, so it doesn't have any dairy in it, and or animal products. So it is something that my sister and her kids can eat because they all have alpha-gal. And let's see what else is there. I had to clean out the smoker, which is always fun. Yeah, it's just been really busy, but and then I'm leading music again this coming week, so I had to pick out songs today, but I at least got that done. And I think everything else is just pretty typical. I don't know if I'm going to have any time to record anything this week. And we did get that recipe up on the cooking channel today for pumpkin roll that my wife made. And yeah, but I don't think I'm going to have any time to record this weekend for the next comparison. I want to get it done. It's been so busy that I haven't had time for much of anything. At least not anything extra like that. It's just been like, okay, there's stuff I have to do for the house, stuff I have to do for the family, stuff I have to prepare for Thanksgiving. Of course, we had a bunch of cleaning to do. That was mostly my wife and kids that did the cleaning since I was working. But yeah. Anyway, that's all I got for that.
Question. So, were you able to find out what exactly was the root cause for your smoker not working?
It's possible something was loose. Honestly, I'm not really sure. I think that it was kind of a combination of things. I think the original problem that I was having, apart from the fact that Igniter hasn't been working for a while, is that the there was a pretty good buildup of sawdust in the back to where, and some of it had gotten a little bit damp from being just close enough to the rain to where some moisture got in there, and I didn't have it covered, so it ended up getting in there, and I think that solidified some of it, which made some of the pellets couldn't really feed through properly. I think that was the main issue I was having, but the igniter is something that's needed to be fixed for a long time, and it's just not something I had taken the time to do. So now I have an extra motor, so if I ever need it, I have it already. I don't see the point in returning it. It's just not really worth the hassle, since it wasn't that expensive anyway. And yeah, I mean, either way, it's fixed. It's working. That's what matters at this point.
Yeah.
All right, so what have you been playing this past week?
So, not really a whole lot. Didn't really have too much time for gaming, but what I did play was, and I don't have any footage for this, was some more Satisfactory. Played some more of that with friends. One of the guys who was leading the Factorio sessions that we've had, he joined us in the Factorio Satisfactory session that we had this past week. So he helped with expanding our base and trying to help be more efficient with our resources. And so pretty much just like we were just pretty much focusing on expanding our base. So that's what we've been doing there. But for the other, I guess, main part of my gaming sessions have been going back to Kingdom Hearts 2 Final Mix. Now, last week I said I really wasn't going to try to focus too much on this game, primarily because of the fact that the data boss fights were annoyingly difficult. Now, I played a couple bosses. I finally got Lexius and I beat him. And then I went and decided, let me try Syx again. And I beat him. And so I thought, maybe if I just keep working at it, maybe I can figure out how to get certain bosses to work. And one thing that I actually will say is that something I did not think about at the time was to use Stitch. Because Stitch is a great summon just because of his ability to stun lock enemies and also to cause enemies to drop HP orbs, which is very useful for when your health is really low. But it definitely helped me out a lot. And I tried going through multiple boss fights again using Stitch, and as a result, where I couldn't beat any bosses last week, this week I have 8 of them defeated so far. So I just have Xemnas, Demix, Vexen, who else missing? Axel and Zaldin. A couple of them are really going to take a lot of patience, especially with Axel, since his fight starts with setting the floor on fire, and so your health automatically drops like a stone the moment the battle starts. Strangely, actually, one thing I will say is that Marluxia was not as hard as I thought it was going to be. I know that he was difficult when you were fighting him earlier in the game, but when you fight him again in the data fight, he's much more manageable, and I think it's partially because of the fact that I maxed out my level. So even though when you fight him, this time around you're not able to regain your counter as much as you could before, but this time, because my level was 99, I had more room for error. So it really only took me 2 tries to beat him. Xigbar, which as you see in this footage, I made a mistake before where I thought that he automatically made the stage smaller. What happened was, originally when I fought him, was the fact that the fight, he just happened to randomly spawn a shorter stage, so I thought it was automatically harder. But when I fought him later on, I realized, okay, no, it's not. I do have more space to work with, which really helps because of the fact that it's really hard to knock him out of just constantly shooting at me. But yeah, I'm gonna try to see now if I can get the other 5 down. I'm really not certain if I feel comfortable with facing the Lingering Will again because of the fact that, I mean, I've looked online and I've seen several sort of cheese strategies to use. I might look those up because for one thing, I realized that your stats really do not help with the fight because of the fact that you deal more damage the longer your combo is. So you could have a very powerful Keyblade, but it deals the same amount of damage that the base Kingdom Key uses. So it's really just gonna take a whole lot of practice, and maybe, like I said, I'll just try to cheese him because he's something. But yeah, that's everything that I've been playing.
Nice. Definitely good to hear you've been able to progress. Well, I, on the other hand, I haven't gotten stuck, but okay, so I've only been playing Dark Souls 3. That's it. The stuff that, so let me just try to go through these in order. So I went into the Smoldering Lake, which is without question one of my least favorite areas in the game. So, you know, of course you get into the beginning of it and you have that what's it called? The giant thing that shoots arrows at you. Gosh, why can I?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
It's like it's on the tip of my brain because you use them in Monster Hunter against certain bosses, like
The Ballista?
Ballista. Thank you. That's what it is. Yes, the Ballista. So dealing with that, and I don't have any footage of that. So dealing with that to start. I initially go into the boss fight there, the old Demon King, and I try him a handful of times and not really making a whole lot of progress. So I decide, okay, well, I'll go into the actual like dungeon around it, which I can't even remember the name of the area, but you got like those fire mages and you have other just really obnoxious enemies. Oh yeah, the poison guys, including the ones that like leap up in the air and then jump on you and then like beat the crap out of you, and just lots of annoying enemies. Then you have Black Knights, which I guess in this game the Black Knights respawn and the Silver Knights don't. So they reversed it from Dark Souls 1. But anyway, so spent a lot of time in this area. Took me a long time to get through it. But I did end up, after spending some time in there and just getting annoyed for a bit, I was looking at Fighting Cowboys walkthrough, and he recommended, you know, fighting Demon King pretty early. And so I just decided, okay, I'll go ahead and give it another try. Went in with Poison Mist, which isn't super powerful, but, you know, it still poisons the boss. The boss can take poison damage. It just doesn't do a lot, and it runs out after a little bit. So I did end up beating him before I finished up the rest of the Smoldering Lake. But then I, you know, went through the rest of it. Had some issues here and there. The Black Knights didn't give me, well, I should say, one of the two Black Knights didn't give me too much trouble. The one with the axe gave me a lot more trouble because of the smaller area to fight him in. The one with the great sword did not give me as much trouble. I didn't have a whole lot of trouble. Oh, that's right. But I did have trouble with one of the NPCs that fights you with this huge great sword. The FUGS, something great sword. I can't remember the name of it. I have it. But anyway, so it's you know, I'm just gonna look at it. It's what is the name of that? I can't wield it yet. I'm not strong enough for it, but it is the Fume Ultra Great Sword. So that guy gave me a bunch of trouble for a while there. until I eventually was able to beat him. And of course, there's also lava in certain parts of that area as well, and just lots of annoying enemies. But at least I think that's probably still so far my least favorite area of the game I've been to. Let me think here. I feel like there was more to that area than that. I mean, really, the ballista was the biggest, most annoying thing of all. But I spent a lot of time going back and forth through that. Oh, yeah, the ballista, and then when I was in the underground area dealing with all of the... gosh, I cannot remember names of things right now. The basilisks. Because, constantly blowing their smoke and turning you to stone. Sun came over the tops of the trees. Poof! Turn them all to stone! But anyway, so it was, dealing with all that stuff, but I was able to get through. And then I went into the Ithil City or whatever it's called. For some reason, once again, I'm having a hard time remembering the names of stuff because I've just spent too much time. But, I went through like the initial part of that and then went into the prison area that's connected to it. And I spent a bunch of time going through that, and it took me quite a while to get through that as well. And that leads into the profaned capital, which I did as much as I could do there, basically, until I got to Yorm the Giant, who is just, like, ridiculous. He's way too strong, and most of the encounters are going to be like the one that I'm going to play right now. And this encounter is just like, okay, I only tried it a handful of times because I just wasn't doing enough damage to really make it doable. And so, like, I go into the fight, I maybe dodge his first attack, get a couple hits in, and then he slams down with his big giant pizza cutter, I guess is what it is. Like, and just, like, I'm not getting anywhere with this fight. So eventually I step away, and I know that, like, at this point in the game, it's technically early to be fighting him, but I had gone through all the, previous areas. So I just thought, oh, well, theoretically I should be able to beat him. But even with putting, like, a dark element, which I think that's one of the things he's supposed to be weak against, that and, like, lightning. I put it on, the sword, and I tried to fight him, and yeah, I was doing like 120 damage with a hit, but that's not anything for a life bar that huge. It just does, like, absolutely nothing. Without that dark element applied, I'm doing like 60 damage. And it's like, okay, this isn't even worth the trouble. So I decided to go back into the prison, and there's some other stuff in there that I hadn't quite gathered yet. Just a few, like, collectible items and just some general stuff that I had missed initially going through. And yeah, I hate that area. Most of all, I hate those guys with the brands, the ones that carry around, like, the...
Yes.
Because they make your health bar shrink super tiny. And I do have toxic mist, so if I can get them with that, then I can usually poison them, and then if I, create enough distance between me and them, they will die from it. But the problem is that more often than not, it was just not even... Well, I shouldn't say more often than not, but there was just enough times to where they still managed to get me, and it was really annoying, especially because there's one room where there's like 10 of them just walking around in a circle over and over. Mm-hmm. And, like, I tried drawing them away so that I could take them out one at a time, and I was able to do it sometimes, but then there'd be, like, one hidden behind a wall that I didn't realize was there, and it would kill me. I'd be like, ah. But yeah, that area was quite annoying. So yeah, but I did but then I went back to the whatever the name of that city is.
Irithel?
Irithel, thank you. That's what it's called, Irithel. So I went back to Irithel and went through. Thankfully, I definitely died to those tall guys a bunch, but I was able to eventually, get all the way through to the front of the boss room. So I went and fought Pontiff initially. Like, I went in more or less blind. No, it was blind. I went in blind initially. I attempted the fight, and the first time I was able to summon someone because of the fact that I was embered, but I didn't have any embers after that, so I couldn't summon anybody. So, backing up a little bit, when I had put up my video, or the clip from last week's episode where I was talking about my experience with Dark Souls 3 so far, one of the comments I got on there was someone telling me that this guy, Pontiff Sullivan, whatever, however you pronounce it, that he is basically like the boss that tends to be where people hit a wall most often. And so I was like going into it expecting, okay, this is going to be a difficult fight. It could end up being similar to Ornstein at Smaug, where it was just something that really tested me to the point where I was just going to struggle with it. And so I went in expecting that I was going to be struggling a lot with this fight. And my initial time, because I had a summon who was helping me out, I mean, I was able to get a decent amount of damage on the boss, but ultimately he ended up killing the enemy, and because I wasn't, familiar with his patterns enough, I couldn't really do much of anything to get very far into the fight. So the person who had commented on the video telling me about this boss had said it's important to learn to parry for this fight. And so I went in expecting, after the first attempt, I looked up, okay, how do I parry? I saw a few videos and, people showing, and like they gave some tips that seemed to be pretty helpful. But the thing is that I am just so bad at parrying that the best I could do was parry his very first attack. And then from there, I was just having no success. And I think the biggest problem was that even when I managed to parry the first attack, I was attacking too quickly, or I wasn't getting close enough to actually do like the critical hit on him. Mm-hmm. And so then he'd get up immediately and start attacking me, and I'd die pretty quickly. And most of the attempts that you'll see in this video are basically just going to be me failing over and over and over. And I'm not going to spend a ton of time talking about this because there's not a ton to say. But I tried a few different things. A while before this, I had tried out using the Guts Sword, as you have so lovingly called it, because I had never tried using it. And I just wanted to see, I like some of the moveset. I like the fact that you can block with it. I think that's great. But I'm not familiar enough with how it handles to where I felt like really comfortable with it. And on the flip side, like, I know how obviously Zweihander handles, and I know that there's a couple other swords that have virtually the same moveset. So I went ahead and just went into the fight, and I don't know, I guess I attempted to use the Guts Sword for a little bit, and I think I only did it one or two times. Mostly I was trying to see if I could get off the special, because I was thinking, well, maybe if I could get off the spinning special thing as he was coming at me, it would hit him and then stop him from being able to do more damage, and then I'd be able to get in more hits after that. But that didn't really work. I just couldn't figure out the timing. So I gave up on trying to do that, and gave up on parrying after many, many attempts of, well, I shouldn't say many, but quite a few attempts of just having no success whatsoever with that. So then I decided instead to just go back to the good old Zweihander and basically just went for two-handing. And the other thing is that I kind of realized that dodging his attacks was a lot easier than trying to parry. And so I figured, oh, okay, I'll go ahead and try that. So I get to this one attempt, and I'm doing great. Like, I am dodging most of his attacks. Not that I'm not getting hit. I'm definitely still getting hit, just not super often. But I'm doing a pretty good job of dodging the majority of his attacks, getting in hits where I can, and somehow managing to still be able to heal and everything. And I get him to his second phase. And second phase, like, since I had already watched someone do it with, all parries, I had at least some idea of what to expect, even though I knew there wasn't any way I was going to parry with, two-handing Zweihander. So I wasn't worried about trying to do that. I was just trying to, make sure I got the hits in that I needed to get in. And I'm doing pretty well. Get him down to the point where basically 2 more hits and he would have been dead, without question. Because my R2 attack was doing like 600 damage to him, something like that. Even the R1 attack was doing over 400, was doing like 420 damage. So it's like I was doing a good amount of damage to him. But the problem is that, of course, as happens too often, I got too greedy. I could have healed myself, and I chose not to heal myself, and he killed me. So, fast forward quite a few more attempts. Usually, I think actually phase 2, I probably only got to like maybe a maximum of 10 times. I don't even think it was that many. I think it was probably closer to 5. But I get to my victory attempt where I'm doing a good job dodging. I'm not doing the best job getting hits in, but I'm getting them in, and I'm able to stay close enough to his body to where it's easier for me to heal as needed. And while I still get hit, I don't think I ever got super close to dying. Like, I definitely got low on health, but not so low that I couldn't recover from it. Typically, I was able to figure out the right timing, and like I'd down an Estus and then dodge immediately and just narrowly avoid his attack. And I'm getting through, get him to his halfway point to phase 2. And I remember, oh yeah, I need to back away from him because when he starts doing his transformation thing, it will do a bunch of damage. So I do that, and I go into the fight. He's spawning his clone. I'm able to dodge a lot of their attacks. I'm just doing R2 attacks primarily, so doing back-to-back pancake slams, which they don't actually pancake him, but they do at least do a lot of damage, because that's doing around like 600 damage per hit, and doing them basically back-to-back, and enough effort, and eventually I win. And unfortunately, my trying to force it so that it would show up right as I'm saying it didn't quite happen. But like momentarily, it will be showing the final victory blow, and there it is. Okay, but anyway, so yeah, but that's about as far as I've gotten. I cashed in my souls and went and started moving forward after that, and haven't gotten real far. I basically just started to get into the next area, and took out a couple of mage NPCs with like one of them having clubs and the other one having something else, but I can't remember exactly what they are. But anyway, I basically just barely got past that, and I know Honor Londo's coming up very soon. I believe it's the next area that I basically just have to take an elevator down to get to, or up to, whichever it is. And yeah, that's been my Dark Souls journey this week. I haven't had nearly as much time to play, but I have had enough time to where I've been able to at least make progress. And I'm really glad I did not get stuck on this guy as long as I did with Ornstein and Smough, because that one, you remember how much I got stuck on that one for a while. And even on New Game Plus, I got stuck on him for a while, mostly because I decided to, that time, kill Smough first instead of killing Ornstein first. And I do want to go back to Dark Souls Remastered and fight. Well, I just want to do all of them again, maybe minus the DLC bosses. I haven't decided if I still want to do those since I don't have to record them. But I am definitely like at least thinking about that eventually, and I would like to. Mostly, I just want to see, like, okay, how would I do against Ornstein and Smough again if I go for Ornstein first this time, now that I have a better idea of what, of how to kill him more easily and how to avoid Smough's attacks more easily. But anyway, none of that really matters. That's all I have. That's all the games. That's everything.
Okay, so, Smoldering Lake is not a fine place to be. I mean, it's really, you just go there because you have to, because you have the boss there, and if you're trying to get like all the achievements, there are certain items you have to get, but no one really goes there because they want to go there.
Right.
So I'm glad that was something you could quickly check off your list and get done. Now, for Yorm the Giant, so he's a gimmick boss. That's the first thing you should know.
Oh, I do want to mention one thing about him real quick that I forgot to mention. I know that you're supposed to be able to, that if you get Sigurd's quest completed, or at least to a certain point, that he'll come in and help you fight, and then the fight is just a joke. But the problem is that the last time I attempted to fight him was before I had found Sigurd in Irithyll. And then even after I found him, I went back in and just tried to see if if he would show up, and he didn't, which means I must still have to do more on his quest beforehand. So I will, I need to look up how to do the rest of that quest and whether or not it's something I can even complete yet, because I know that it can be a ridiculously easy fight if you have Sigurd, but if you don't have Sigurd, then it's a difficult fight because you can hardly do any damage, at least so far. But yeah.
Well, a couple things actually. I think if you've already gone to Yorm, if you haven't gotten advanced Sigurd's quest far enough, because he's supposed to be in a dungeon in that area. Mm-hmm. So if he's not in the dungeon, then you probably can't advance it any further. I'm not certain yet. But you don't need him to actually make the gimmick work.
Okay.
There's actually a sword in the area. It's right on Yorm's throne.
Yeah.
If you grab that sword and you use its ability, that's what makes it easy. Like Sigurd makes it easy because he has the sword himself, but you can have the sword yourself and use it on Yorm.
Okay.
It's called Storm Ruler.
Yeah. I have the sword. Because the last time I tried going in, I went in with that sword, and maybe it was just because I didn't use it when it was fully charged, but it didn't do like any damage to him at all.
Yeah, so like basically you charged up all the way, and then once it's fully charged, it deals a blow to Yorm, and it brings him to his knees. And at that point, like, then it deals a massive damage to him, and it's just...
All right.
Yeah.
Well, that's good to know. I will have to do that. Maybe even after the podcast tonight, I'll just jump in and do that, because it's like, it bugged me. It's like, how is it that I can get through this whole area without having too much difficulty with the enemies, other than, just how annoying they are? But then when I get to this boss, like, I can barely touch him. It's like, okay, that makes sense. All right, well then I will have to do that. That's very good to know.
Now, I mean, if you do feel like doing the effort, I mean, I'm not saying you have to or even want to. It is possible to kill Yorm without it and just like chip away his health. I had too much time on my hands, so I like took the time to do that. But it is possible to beat Yorm without it, but it's just gonna take you probably like 15 minutes to get through that.
Is that just like using arrows or something?
No, just like using your own sword. Like that's what I did.
Oh, I
I
see
just
what you're
used my
saying. Yeah.
sword and I just like kept on hitting
Yeah.
him.
The problem was is that it was just like it was too hard to get the hits in enough because it's like I'd get maybe a couple hits in and then he'd end up getting me. And yeah, I'm sure that if I worked hard enough, I could learn the patterns and avoid him. But yeah, I think I'll just do the gimmick method because that sounds more fun.
I definitely agree with you about Irithyll Dungeons, and that's probably one of my least favorite areas in the game. Possibly even more so than Farron's Keep, just because of the jailers that are able to, like you said, to whittle down your health bar.
Yeah.
Now the thing is, they're only able to do that if they have sight of you. So if you go around a corner,
Right.
they can't use their ability, which is something that I sort of used to take advantage of, is just to go around the corner and then just as soon as they come, swing my sword and knock them down and then just like finish them while they're on the ground.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's not fun at all. And I'm so thrilled to hear you mention Pontiff Sullivan because he was my wall and he's my favorite wall just because of the fact that I agree with you that like I suck at parrying and I know that parrying is a key to beat him, but because of the build that I make, it's not centered around parrying,
Right.
and I just had so much pride that I was like, I don't care about parrying. I'm
Yeah.
going to do it. But like because I use the gut sword, it's just like it's very slow for that type of boss who's
Right.
just able to constantly string combos, and so that boss probably took me about I think 39 attempts. Although I only beat him because I swallowed my pride, equipped a buckler, and then just like parried him and just managed to beat him that way. But I, even despite all that, I just love his design.
Yeah.
I love his abilities and his attacks, and also just like his background as well. Because I kind of wish that he had a cutscene because in the actual story for the game, he's a central part as to why so many events actually happen within the game. And so I'm just like adding all that in together. I just really love him so much that I'm just like, yeah, I love this boss fight. He kicked my butt so many times and he like handed me the most L's out of every boss in the game. But I just really enjoyed it so much. I think you're definitely in it for a treat once you reach Anorlando because, well, I mean, without spoiling anything, you'll see an old friend from Dark Souls 1, who may or may not be there.
Well, I'm
But-
assuming you're talking about the giant blacksmith guy. No,
Not necessarily.
Okay, fair enough.
I like I said, it's you'll see. It'll be a different experience this time around. But I look forward to you going there and seeing what happens.
But it's not Ornstein and Smough, right?
No.
He's like,
No.
Although, to be
It's,
honest, I think that would probably be easier in this game. Well, I guess I should say, if they had a similar moveset, they'd be easier because dodging is easier in this game than it was in
That
Dark
is
Souls.
true.
But,
That is definitely true.
yeah.
But yeah, definitely glad that you are still making good progress and enjoying it. Yeah, I definitely look forward to hearing what happens next week with the progress that you've made.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it was so satisfying though to just dodge the majority of Pontiff's attacks, because really, this is one fight where you can actually dodge early, and most of the time it's going to be to your benefit. But the main thing is you have to dodge towards him. You have to dodge into him, because you have to try to stay as close to his body as possible. That seems to be the best way to avoid his attacks. And I mean, like watching people parry him, they make it look so easy, and it should be easy, but the problem is my timing is just so far off on those, because like I always have a hard time telling how soon I need to parry. I'm used to games like Ghost of Tsushima and God of War, where the parry timing it's like just before they hit you, and in this it's like no, you have to do it surprisingly early, and it's really hard to figure out the right timing on that. So yeah, so that once I realized that dodging was easier for me, I'm glad I did that. And I think what helps is 2 of the rings I have equipped. So I have the one equipped that gives you additional invincibility frames, but it also lowers your defense. And then the other one is it increases your dexterity, and it makes you kind of like disappear when you roll. And I'm not sure if that like affects your hitbox or if it's just purely a visual thing. Like, I don't know exactly how all that works, but I just know that those 2 combined seem to help my dodging better. And so, yeah, but you'll get a chance to see what the fight looks like in the podcast, in the video version of the podcast, or in the clip that I'll post later on that'll have all that talk. So
yeah, and actually one last thing I will say about parrying is the fact that I don't even completely know what the window is myself, because you can get the parry to work but still take damage, oddly enough, it seems, because when I faced Pontiff, when I recorded the gameplay footage of when I actually beat him, and I went back and realized somehow I took damage even though I wasn't actually hit during the fight, and then I realized no, apparently somehow when I parried him, even though I performed it and I was able to counter him, he still was able to deal damage. So I don't know like what the exact window is, but like apparently even if unless you get it completely perfect, you can still take damage and get hit.
yeah.
So that's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, like, I wish I could get the parrying down, because it's so BA when you see someone do that. It's just like, okay, that's amazing. I love it. But it's just like I tried doing it, and the best I could do is get the very first attack parried, and then after that, it's just if I failed to get the critical hit on him, which I did in every instance where I managed to parry him, then he was just moving around me, and then I end up dying shortly after. But it's like I have no idea how many attempts it took me to actually beat that fight, because so many of them were just super short. And I mean, this was one where like I didn't get nearly as frustrated with it, mostly just because it's like I knew that this was all me, that I just was bad at the parrying. Like I hadn't quite gotten it down even after watching people do it. But ultimately, I'm glad I went with the dodging method. I mean, like I would love to learn how to parry it properly, but in this case, I was just glad that I was able to get through it. And I think it also didn't feel like it was as long, because unlike in Dark Souls, the first time that I fought Ornstein and Smough, I didn't have a huge long run back. It was a much shorter run back. It's like all I have between the boss and me is 2 little enemies, which I technically could run past, but usually just killed. Like these 2 ghosts that were in the graveyard. And apart from that, it's like, okay, you got a couple of those tall guys, but they're easily avoidable if you just run straight to the boss door. And there's only like, I think 1 time maybe where they managed to hit me through the boss door, and otherwise they, couldn't get to me quickly enough. So, but yeah, good stuff. Still, I think I'm roughly about halfway through the game, including the DLC. So we'll see how everything goes, but I'm still enjoying it. I haven't hit a wall yet. So I thought earlier when I was trying to do this fight earlier today, because I did a little bit on a break, I was starting to think that this was going to be a wall for me and that I was going to be taking a break for a while, but I just kept trying. And when I realized that the parrying wasn't going to work for me, then I tried dodging, and it seemed like that was working way better. And then the fact that I was able to get him down halfway with the dodging method seemed to be like, okay, this seems to be the right thing. And then I got him down to just 2 hits away from death. And it's like, okay, I can definitely do this. I just have to be a little bit smarter and less aggressive. And then, when I went back and was able to finally get the right run, it worked out pretty much the same way as the previous best run, except that I was more careful and was able to dodge more attacks, which made it easier for me to take him down faster. And I still get to use my beloved Zweihander. Even though I did get his flaming sword, the accursed sword or whatever it's called. I tried that out briefly, and I like it. It handles very similarly to Zweihander, minus the being able to set fire to itself and attack with that. But because of the fact that it uses up the FP or whatever the magic points are, it made it so that I couldn't use like my toxic mist, which is something that I like using a lot, since it does a lot more damage than poison and it takes effect a lot faster. But anyway, that's it. All right. Any other thoughts before we get into the news?
No, sir.
All right. So we got a handful of stories today, some of which are bigger than others. So you want to start us off with the story about Valve's new guidelines on DLC and season passes?
Yeah. So Valve has recently come out with a statement, and this is addressing publishers of games. And so what they want to do is to do something that is very pro-consumer. And so what they want is for publishers to address or to have a sort of timeline available for when games that are part of season passes, to have sort of like a time frame of when the DLC for those games will come out. So that way developers will, or that way the consumers know, when to expect, the latest DLC in that season pass. And if it is not necessarily, if the DLC doesn't come out, if it's canceled or whatever, then the consumer will be able to get a refund on that because of the fact that the season pass sort of, I guess you could say, promise wasn't fulfilled. And yeah, that's pretty much the gist of things. I have some thoughts on this, but I will let you go first on this.
Yeah, I like this idea for sure. I'm having a hard time thinking of any specific examples of games where it's been the case where they've had a season pass and then had to delay whatever the DLC was that they promised, and to where this could actually be like super useful. But at the same time, even though I can't think of specific examples, I could definitely think of ways that theoretically this could happen, and I think that's really good. The one thing I would wonder about, I'm guessing that probably the only people who would be able to take advantage of this, assuming a developer had this issue, would be anyone who bought the game directly through Steam. Probably not otherwise. Mm-hmm. So if you buy you buy the game in a season pass through Green Man Gaming, for example, you'd be out of luck. Because unless Green Man Gaming takes on the same policy, but even then, I'm just not really sure if they would. So I like the idea of this. It seems like it's very pro-consumer, but it's just a matter of seeing practically how this ends up working out. I guess on the plus side, even if there's not specifically any examples where this does apply currently or, could apply, at the same time, this could also be a way that developers could basically have a fire put under them to make sure that they deliver the product that they promise, and that they don't try to, I don't know, I guess, don't try to pull a fast one and, get people to pay for something that's never going to come. So, yeah, that's all I got.
Yeah, this is definitely, I agree with you a whole lot. This is definitely a very pro-consumer stance, and there's a lot of good here. If it wasn't for the fact that they themselves removed it, I think this is probably the only time where this rule would actually apply, and that was for, I believe, Star Wars Outlaws. I think what's the Star Wars Outlaws where Ubisoft canceled or they either pulled or they canceled something with like the DLC or season pass.
I think that was just with Assassin's Creed.
Okay, that's what I'm thinking.
Whatever it is, the new one. Shadows.
Okay. Yeah, that's it. That's probably really the only one where I can think of where that could work. But at the same time, of course, Ubisoft provided refunds themselves, so it's not something where Valve would have to step in. But if we had another situation like that, it's good that we would have that case there, just to help us out. It is also interesting that you mentioned about the fact that, if you buy a season pass or anything like that off of another site like Greenman Gaming or like Fanatical, something like that, then you probably wouldn't have that same benefit, which kind of sucks, but I guess you could say it comes with the territory with buying it from these sort of partner sites, because you can get the game cheaper, but you also don't get, I guess you could say, the same benefits that you would if you bought directly through Steam. But yeah, I mean, all in all, though, this definitely a good thing. Like you said, it lights a fire under these publishers, so they can't take their time with something, or if they say, if something for whatever reason's delayed for a long time, whether for one reason or another, and then they say, oh, we're just gonna put this on hiatus or just suspend it or something like that, then Valve would say, hold on for a second, because you didn't hold up your end of the bargain, these customers gave you money and they expect a product, so you haven't given them their product, so you kind of owe them their money. It's definitely good to have that sort of have that reassurance that someone's at least looking out for us. So good job, Valve.
Good guy, Valve. All right, good stuff. Well, moving on into our next topic. Sony is reportedly, according to Bloomberg, in the early stages of developing a portable console that plays PlayStation 5 games. Now, of course, at this point, there is no confirmation from Sony whatsoever. This is completely different from their PlayStation Portal, which, although it has recently had updates that enabled it to play games from the Sony games library. I can't remember the actual name of the library, but let's see if I can find that specific information here. But basically, the way that the PlayStation Portal is set up now is that you can, at least in beta at the moment, you can stream games from the PlayStation's game library, from their streaming game library, without having to have a PlayStation 5. You only need to have a Portal. So the Portal can do that now, but this supposed PlayStation 5 portable, whatever it's actually going to be called, it's apparently in development, and Bloomberg says that this is something that it's in the early stages, but it is planned, and supposedly this is contending with Nintendo in the portable game market. So, what are your thoughts?
I have thoughts. I guess mainly questions, I would say. The first one is, of course, this is, as you said, this is unconfirmed. It's not something that is, definite. And also, of course, Bloomberg says it's only in the early stages. But I want to know is how much of a PS5 are we talking about as far as the power? Because, I mean, considering the fact that at best, with what we currently have with handhelds, as far as like handheld PCs, if you're talking about like the ROG Ally, that's probably only about, what would you say, like a PS4 Pro in terms of power?
Yeah, thereabouts.
Or something like that. So you're really, it's gonna take a lot to get like a PS5 into a handheld. That's something I'm very curious about. And unless they're saying like you're able to play PS5 games, you might not be able to play it at the same fidelity or at least at the same frame rate, but you're going to be able to play your PS5 games. Because if it's something that, based on semantics, is like you're able to play your PS5 games, but you're not playing a at PS5 quality. Like I feel like those are two different things that would sort of need to be addressed. And even if you were able to actually play, say, on PS5 quality, which I find kind of hard to believe, I agree that this would be a very early stage thing. Like, I highly doubt that even with the latest mobile chips, we have anything that would actually be able to contend with a PS5 in terms of power. Not only that, but the battery life would be abysmal,
Yeah.
to say the least. There's no matter how large of the battery you have, like the efficiency is not there where you could just like, yeah, I'm gonna play a PS5 game for 5 minutes before the battery dies. Like that's not feasible. But I'm still really curious because of the fact that, for one thing, I'm wondering if you're able to play PS5 games, is it something where you could say play the games you already own and just play it, actually, as first, like, if you have them in your library, could you just like say transfer the game, like install the game onto your PS5 portable and play on the go, or something where you actually have to buy the game separately, even if you had them on your own PS5, which personally would suck, having to buy the games all over again. But it's just something I'm very curious about on that end. And also, just one thing that I'm also curious about is, would it be digital or would it be physical? Because that's something that I doubt they would just like, if it's physical, that they would just say, hey, take your PS5 disc and just put it right into your handheld. And I mean, the size of that handheld that thing's going to be huge if you're going to have like an actual Blu-ray disc that you put in your handheld. Yeah, I feel like they would just make it digital, but yeah, I mean, of course, again, this is all just speculation on an unconfirmed handheld, but I just have so many questions about how this thing would work that I'm just curious to know more about it. I feel like if it's an actual thing, and if it's going to try to do what this report says, I would say at the earliest we would probably see it at least would be 2027, maybe 2028.
Yeah.
Because and even then, still, if you're actually going to have a PS5 portable, would it be technically too late? Because we're more than halfway, I guess you could say, into the PS5's lifespan. And around that time, maybe 4 years later, they're going to be already at least talking about the PS6.
Yeah.
So that's, again, another question I would have about this device, as far as how they're going to sort of sell it. It's definitely interesting, but we'll of course have to see. And of course, the articles mentioned, Nintendo being the sole rival, but Sony's gonna have to work really hard to get back into that market, because while the PSP, they did a great job with getting their own audience and their own install base, the Vita killed the momentum that the PSP had. And they did nothing after that. So trying to regain market share in the handheld market where Nintendo has been dominating it is going to be very, very difficult. But hey, best of luck.
Yeah, and on top of that, if Xbox is also entering the market, which they've already said, they've confirmed that they are, that's going to be the real competition, is Xbox. Because, like, the reality is Nintendo and Sony aren't even in the same ballpark. And it's not because of, the lack of quality in terms of what Sony can produce. It's just more because of the fact that Nintendo's already has that huge install base. They have this system that is completely different, that's both a handheld and a home console. Whereas even if they manage to get a portable device that runs PS5 games, even close to native, even PS4 Pro level, the reality is that they're going to be in a position where they cannot possibly, they just can't reach the same market, because they'll still be held back by the fact that unless this can play PS6 games, you know, they're going to be, you know, selling to two different audiences, and they're going to end up with the same problem that they had with Vita and that sort of thing. Other than, I mean, the Vita's biggest problem was the memory cards. That was really the biggest problem with it, because the Vita's a fantastic handheld, despite its flaws. You know, like especially the rear touchpad was such a stupid gimmick. I hate the rear touchpad so much. As much as I love the Vita, the rear touchpad is garbage. But like, I still think the Vita is a fantastic handheld. It's got a great design. In fact, I'm going to grab mine. And while I had to, you know, like get a special grip for mine in order to make it easier to hold. So like this one by default, it only has the L1 and R, or L and R buttons, and then it has the rear touchpad for other stuff. It doesn't have clickable sticks. But this grip that I got for it basically makes it so that these triggers touch the rear touchpad, so that for games that don't have as much of like the movable stuff on the rear touchpad, it can act as R2 and L2 buttons. Like I've used it in Ratchet and Clank, for example. Works great on there. But mostly, more than anything, it just makes it way more comfortable to hold for, you know, hands as gigantic as mine. It's still not perfect. Like, these little nubs only give my fingers so much to grab, but it's still like a big improvement. And I love this device. I love this thing. I mean, when we're talking purely handheld devices that don't dock without a bunch of extra effort anyway, it's between the 3DS and the Vita for me. Like, the 3DS just beats out the Vita, but the Vita is top tier for me. PSP is a great device. I got mine really late, and I basically just got it for literally Final Fantasy and Kingdom Hearts. That was it. And I missed out on a lot of great games until much later because of that. But that being said, this idea of Sony doing a portable device, well, for one, I just don't think they can compete with Nintendo. And I don't think that they're in the same market as like Steam Deck and that sort of thing. Like, I think they technically could sell better than the Steam Deck and other handheld PCs because of how loyal the PlayStation fan base is, especially fanboys, but even just the fan base in general. And if it wasn't for the fact that we have so many PlayStation games on PC, I would be on board for buying that day one, without question, because I do enjoy a lot of Sony's games. But for me, like, I look at this idea of a PlayStation 5 portable, and initially I was thinking, you know, I wouldn't mind that, because I mean, it should be backwards compatible with like my PS4 games, for example. There are some PS5 games that I haven't played yet that I wouldn't mind playing, and of course having it on a handheld would be great. But then I thought about it some more, and I realized, but then I'd have to buy another copy of these games, and I'd rather, I mean, that's part of the reason why I abandoned PlayStation consoles, why I haven't bought a new one, is because I don't want to have to keep buying the game multiple times. I'll just buy it on PC, and then I can play it forever. Well, as long as they let me play it. Eventually, I probably should just get some DRM-free copies of some of those games, even if I don't necessarily play them again anytime soon. But at least right now, you know, like, I have quite a few of the PlayStation PC ports, and I played most of them. The only one I haven't played on PC anyway is Uncharted. And Uncharted 4 I already played on PS4. Lost Legacy I have not played at all. And the only reason I haven't played them is because I want to replay the first 3 Uncharted games before I jump into 4. And I kind of wish I had just waited to buy it because of the fact that at the time I was like really into replaying the Uncharted games, and then I fell off and I never got back to it. But anyway, my point is that while I like the idea of Sony doing another PlayStation handheld, and I do think it will sell well, I also just wonder what they're going to do to destroy it. What they're going to do to completely mess up its ability to stay relevant. Because as much as it would be great if it played a lot of these games, the reality is I don't see enough of a benefit for me personally to get that versus just sticking with PC. Because realistically speaking, by the time something like that comes out, there will be a new Steam Deck or, some other type of handheld PC that I might be interested in. I'm hoping that it's at least 2 or 3 years before we get the next Steam Deck, because I would really rather not buy a new one anytime soon. I guess I could hand the current one down or whatever, but like I already bought, the Steam Deck in 2022 and then the OLED in 2023, and I don't really want to buy another one. And like, I think it's easier for me to resist at this point. Even if something were to come out, next week or something, I would probably still be able to resist for a while because of the fact that I'm mostly satisfied with my Steam Deck, apart from some of the newer games that run really poorly. But I know I'm kind of all over the place. Obviously, handhelds are a big thing to me. I love handheld gaming probably more than any other form of gaming. With the Steam Deck, it's just made such a huge difference in being able to focus on my PC games. And it's what has taken me from being like half and half on console and PC to being like 90% PC. And yes, the Steam Deck it's still technically a PC, and I'm still playing my PC library, so I count it as still being PC gaming. Even though I probably do I would say it's probably like 60% Steam Deck, 40% PC, and then 10% other handheld consoles. Because I have some other actual consoles, but I don't really play those anymore. I haven't in quite a while. It's really, I just play like the Switch is the only other quote unquote console I have, and then that I play every so often, and then otherwise it's just my other handhelds, my Vita and my 3DS. So, but yeah. Anyway, I don't know. I'm not sure if I really covered the topic super well, but. To try and TLDL it all, I like the idea of a new Sony handheld. I am skeptical about whether or not it can actually be relevant. I don't think it's going to be able to compete with Nintendo very well because Nintendo's in their own market. And I think that its biggest competition will be Xbox. Xbox is handheld. And especially if Xbox does this rumored thing of opening up their platform to be able to have PC storefronts, then you'd be able to play anything it can run. And it would be a drastic difference in what you get there versus what you get with the PlayStation handheld. The closed ecosystem, which will undoubtedly be well designed and will probably be great, but you got the closed ecosystem with games that are not even exclusive, and then you have potentially an a more open ecosystem if Xbox allows different stores from PC.
Yep.
All right. Any other thoughts on that?
No, sir.
All right. You want to talk about this GOG preservation program?
Sure. So, I can't remember if we mentioned this before at some point or not, but there was an issue with the video games. I can't remember what the foundation is, but just basically, video games I think it's called Historians, or something like that. They were denied pretty much exemption for being able to preserve games. So GOG sort of stepped up as a result, and they have a program called the GOG Preservation Program, and it's something that they're working on as far as being able to get older games running on modern hardware, so that way games that are older can still be able to be enjoyed by people with newer hardware and future hardware down the line even. And right now they're able to get 100 classic games from their library and catalog, and they've released them with updates with updates and new builds, and they're continuing to try to work on making other games available to play on modern hardware. So, as the article says from VGC, the first compatibility certified games included entries in the Resident Evil, Warcraft, Dragon Age, Fallout, System Shock, Diablo, Heroes of Might and Magic, Dungeon Keeper, The Witcher, and Monkey Island franchises. And also, just in case anyone's very confused about Resident Evil, Resident Evil 1, 2, and 3 were released on GOG about a month or so ago, and these are like the original versions. So this isn't like the remake of Resident Evil 1, 2, or 3. So just in case anyone's confused on that end. And GOG says it plans to keep adding more games to the preservation program over time, and it shared a statistic from the video game. This is what I was thinking about before I couldn't remember the name. The Video Game History Foundation, which claims that 87% of games created before 2010 are inaccessible today, which is a lot of games. And that is pretty much it for the article. I have my own thoughts, which I'll share shortly, but I'll let you go ahead and kick things off.
Good old GOG. That's all I have to say. No. But really, no, I love this. I love the fact that they're making this effort to keep these games functioning on new hardware, because even though most of the time you're not really gonna have any issues with running old games on new hardware, there definitely are situations where you're gonna have problems running some of those games. Like my buddy on Discord who's very much a console gaming guy, and it's like his biggest thing has been trying to run Dragon Age Origins, and he has the Steam version, which I guess has a problem that it just doesn't work on current things. Like it'll launch and then it crashes not long after, and I think it's like a memory leak or something like that. I believe that the fix is basically just like shutting off a couple of cores on the first boot in order to get it running, and then after that it runs properly. For someone who knows how to do that stuff, it's probably not too difficult to fix, but the fact is that this is one of the things that keeps console people away from PC gaming. And I'm not saying, like, I know this guy, he wouldn't switch over even if this game was working. But GOG, of course, you can get the games completely DRM free. You don't have to use the Galaxy launcher at all. You can just get the EXE and you can run the game and you're good to go. But I just love the fact that they're making this effort, because there are enough games out there where they can have issues running on current hardware. And the less hoops that people have to jump through, the better. Especially when you're trying to get people who are not used to PC gaming, whether they decided that they want to try out PC gaming or they just want to play, a game or here or there that they can't play on their current console. Like Dragon Age Origins, for example, because you can play that if you have an Xbox 360 or a PS3. You might be able to do backwards compatible on the Series X. I'm not sure about that. I would guess you probably could, but you can't do it on the PS5. Having access to these games that otherwise are inaccessible is great, and anytime that they can do something to make that happen, that's great. And that reminds me that I need to look up this old game that I tried playing back in the 90s that I never got very far into. It's called Lunicus. I probably actually still have the CD-ROM version of the game, but I remember when I was a kid, like I couldn't really figure out where to go or anything. Like I'd go through like this early tutorial area, and then I'd get into this first area where it was like a shooter, and I didn't know what I was doing because I was a dumb kid who'd never played a first-person shooter before. And so I'd just like stand in one spot and I'd like shoot stuff for a while, and then eventually I'd run out of ammo or I would die. And I need to look on GOG and see if that game is there somewhere, because if I can find it, I'm probably going to get it so that I can finally play that game that's been technically my backlog for like 30 years. Or however long it's been. I think it was like 1994 probably that the game came out. Well, maybe it's not that old, but it could be somewhere around there. Point is that GOG is great, and I don't utilize them enough, mostly because it's just one more hoop to jump through sometimes. And at least when I got the when I downloaded the launchers for all the GOG games I have, or at least had at the time. Now I've added quite a few free games to that. It only was it was installing Galaxy so that I could access the game, and it's like I don't really want to use Galaxy. Even though it has the cloud saves, which is great, but it's like I'd rather just install the game directly to Steam and not worry about anything else, not have another launcher installed. But anyway, that's all I have on that topic.
Yeah. So yeah, this is definitely a very great thing, and I mean, to a degree, I mean, I don't know if this technically would count as the same thing, but I do know that with certain older games, GOG has sort of like patches, or I can't remember if these are official patches or patches that were sort of community made, but they would sort of bundle these in with the game, so that way the games that were older and couldn't necessarily or were harder to run on modern hardware were, if you bought the game and you downloaded it and installed it, the patches were already included, and you were able to play these games on newer hardware because of the fact that they went ahead and, bundled the patches with them.
Yeah.
Which I think is great, because unfortunately those sort of things aren't necessarily included with the Steam versions. So it's great that we have that sort of thing. And that's actually something that I was even made aware of. I can't remember what the channel is called, but there's a channel I've watched before, and this guy plays older games, and he really talks about, how much he enjoys the GOG versions because of the fact that a lot of fixes were applied to the GOG versions because they're already patched into there with them. So I think that's definitely possibly another reason why it's great to use GOG if you want to play some older games. I can't remember if GOG was the first one to do it or not, if it was the first store to publish this, but at least it was one of the first ones. It came to GOG before Steam, but Daggerfall had a Unity version made, so that way people could actually play it on modern hardware, because if you were originally going to be playing Daggerfall, and I think also the first Elder Scrolls Arena, you actually have to use a DOS emulator in order to actually run those games, since those are really old games.
Yeah.
But with the Unity version, you actually can just play that game directly on your current hardware. And I'm pretty certain that GOG was the first store to have it, and eventually at some point Steam had it. But yeah, GOG definitely goes through a lot of stuff to make sure that older games are able to be played on modern hardware, which I think is great. Being able to play these games and not worry about, oh man, I really sort of like need to have two PCs, one PC to play my modern games, another PC to play my older games, where GOG's like, no, you don't need that. Just have your PC, install the games, you're good to go, buddy. So I think it's great. It's one of the reasons why I advocate for GOG. And people say, oh, PC gamers are just a bunch of Steam fanboys. They just want you to, Steam's a monopoly. They don't care about any other stores. That's why they want Epic's to fail. No, GLG, unlike Epic Games, provides a service that no one else really cares about. And sadly enough, not even Valve does it. They provide DRM-free games that you buy, you own. No one can take them away from you, no matter what. So that's something that Valve doesn't offer. That's something that Epic doesn't offer. And so that's why I really like to recommend GLG when I can. It lacks in many features. The Galaxy is a far cry from Steam whatsoever. It's got a lot of issues, but what they offer, the DRM aspect of the games, and being able to play these games, especially now with the new initiative, being able to play older games on modern hardware without any issues, that's just another reason why I would recommend GLG. Of course, I still will just run them through Steam because of the fact that all of the special features like Steam Overlay and being able to remap my controls, Steam just has that, and that's great. But if I want to, get a game that is, game that's like available only on GLG because it's like an older game, or if I'll even double dip. I've purchased games from both Steam and GLG, like Horizon Zero Dawn. I bought it on Steam first, came to GLG. I want to support Sony putting games DRM free, so I bought it. In fact, every single Sony game that came out to GLG, I've purchased. And even ones that I don't even own on Steam, like God of War, Uncharted. I don't own those games on Steam, but I bought them on GLG because they're DRM free, and I want Sony to put more and more games on GLG, so that way we can have DRM free copies. Of course, the way Sony's going with their whole you need an account to play these games, I feel like that's going to stop soon enough.
Yeah.
But for the time being, it's definitely a good run. But I really also just want publishers in general to not be afraid of GLG. It's people will enjoy being able to just buy a game and know that they own it. So why not give it a shot, publishers? But yeah, I'm going off track. But all in all, this is a great thing. I'm definitely glad that GLG is doing this, and I hope that more games are able to be added to this in the future, and we just get more games that are able to be played years down the line.
For sure. Yeah, and I did look, and GOG does not have Lunicus, so I can probably find it somewhere. Probably need like a DOS simulator or whatever in order to be able to run it. So eventually I just want to try it because I want to see okay, now that I'm actually experienced at playing video games, I probably could figure out what to do with everything and just see what I can do with it. I think I tried at one point just installing it on my modern computer and it didn't work at all. So I'll have to just mess around. Maybe I'll see if I can dig out the disc. I think I have it in a box in here somewhere. I'll see if I can get it to work and then maybe just give it a shot. But anyway. All right. Any more thoughts on that topic?
No, sir.
So Shuhei Yoshida. Great guy, Shuhei Yoshida from Sony Interactive Entertainment has been with the company for 31 years and is leaving the company. He has announced that he is retiring January 15th of 2025. He recently had been put in charge of the indies side of things. Let me just read what he had to say in his official announcement. I'm leaving Sony Interactive on January 15th, 2025. It's like announcing the launch date of a new game, something I haven't done for a long time. I've been with PlayStation from the beginning, and this is my 31st year with PlayStation. And when I hit 30 years, I was thinking, might be about time for me to move on. The company's been doing great. I love PlayStation 5. I love the games that are coming out on this platform. And we have new generations of management who I respect and admire. I'm so excited for the future of PlayStation. So, PlayStation is in really good hands. I thought, okay, this is my time. And let's just see here. But yeah, he's been with PlayStation for over 30 years, and I mean, it looks like he's probably been there since back before PlayStation became just specifically a Sony thing. And I mean, back when they were still in talks to be the Nintendo PlayStation, way back when. So, but yeah, I'll just say, Yoshida is a great guy. He seems to be like probably one of the most humble people at PlayStation from everything I've been able to tell. And he's not a fanboy, which is something I can't say for a lot of the higher ups at PlayStation. But like, I remember when the Steam Deck came out, he was showing off how excited he was to be able to play Horizon Zero Dawn on his Steam Deck and everything like that. And I think he's, done stuff, talked about like Nintendo. I mean, playing on the Switch and stuff like that. And it's like, okay, this is a good guy. This is the kind of guy that you got respect for, because he's not just a fanboy, even though he's part of PlayStation. He's just like a really nice guy and someone that people can actually like legitimately respect, and not some of these heads of PlayStation that are, I mean, I guess I get why they choose to be, very much PlayStation only, because it's their job. But at the same time, like they don't have any, you don't get any indication that they actually like play video games and care about stuff. Like you have someone like Phil Spencer who talks about playing on handheld PCs and playing on Nintendo and playing games on PlayStation even. I mean, like you get these people who are humble and who are actual gamers, and then you get these other, corporate guys who basically they're in it for the money and the brand and nothing else. And even if they do good work, it's just hard to have the same kind of respect for them, I guess. But anyway, I basically just gave my thoughts on it. So what are your thoughts?
Yeah, this is definitely sort of, I guess you could say, a surprise hearing this, but I mean, 31 years is definitely a long time to work anywhere. And I mean, you don't think about it, and it's like, yeah, it's definitely been a while. So I mean, I definitely can understand him wanting to just move away. And one thing that I think it wasn't mentioned here, was it? Okay, no. So he did say that he does want to stay within the industry, so it's not necessarily him retiring altogether from gaming, but just moving on from Sony. So he, does say he wants to continue to help around and also possibly help independent game developers, which I think, that's something that he has been doing for the past something years. So it makes sense. It's something that he sort of, I guess to a degree, it's also sort of going back to his roots. I mean, I don't know how you would, I don't know if you necessarily would say they're independent, but, when you're going back to like the original PS1, when you're starting with games like Jak and Daxter, well, I mean, that's PS2 really, but if you're going back to like the original PS1 games, like Legend of Dragoon, if you're going to like make these games that like completely fresh, brand new, to a degree, that's sort of like what he's doing with working with indie games. He's working with making games that are completely new, helping get these games from smaller teams able out into the open, and just be able to help culture an audience. So I feel like this is something that he really could do. Now, whether he does something like, if he sort of like makes his own publishing company, sort of like a Japanese Devolver Digital, or if he, maybe just makes his own studio, I feel like that's something he could do. Of course, only time will tell. Also, we don't know if there's any sort of agreements, or I guess any sort of contracts involved, as far as like you're not able, sort of like with it wasn't, oh gosh, it wasn't Sakurai, it was, the other developer we talked about earlier this year who wasn't able to who had a
Disclosure
non-competition agreement.
Non. Oh yeah, non-competition. You're right. Never mind.
Yeah, I can't remember. I can't remember which dev it was, but if it's, I'm just wondering if it's something like that where he can't necessarily like open his own studio or work somewhere else with over a certain period of time.
Yeah, it's on the tip of my
But,
brain. He was the guy with platinum, right?
Yes.
Gosh, what's his name?
Yeah, like it's on the tip of my tongue too, because like I have his Twitter profile pic in my head,
Right.
but I just like can't remember for the life of me.
Gosh, that's gonna bug me. Why can't we remember this guy's name? Oh man.
Wait a second.
Let me see if it's on the Bayonetta case.
Is it? I feel like it's Kamiya.
Hideki Kamiya.
Hideki Kamiya. Yeah, there we go.
Thank you.
But I feel like I wonder if it's something like that where he's not able to start up a studio or work for another company for like say a year or so. If that's sort of an agreement. If not, I mean, of course, he's probably gonna at least want to take a break at the very least, which I can understand. He's done a whole lot of work, so if he wants to, just even if he doesn't have that sort of agreement in place, if he wants to take a break and just say, I want to spend some time to myself, just spend some time with friends and family, I can completely understand that. But I wouldn't be surprised if he stepped back in and said, yeah, I'm just gonna make like my own sort of small publishing company, so that way indie devs who want to like make their own games and are trying or lack the resources and want to get out there, I want to be able to help them. I feel like that's something that he could be doing, just because again, that's sort of like what he did in the beginning with PlayStation, with getting these, again, they weren't necessarily indie games, but getting these new IPs, these new ideas out there.
Right.
That's definitely what I can sort of see what he would do. But hey, regardless of what happens next for him, I wish him well. He definitely had a very good run, 31 years of work, and especially at the same place, that's definitely something. And I think it also really says something for a lot of people that we know in the industry who have done a whole lot of work. I mean, look at Shigeru Miyamoto. I mean, he's been doing this. He's been working for Nintendo for years, and he's still going. So, I mean, it's almost like, how long are you going to go before you retire? It's like, or do you just like intend to keep going because you have so much passion for what you're doing that you just can't stop? Which, I mean, could be the case. Which, I mean, hey, I mean, I definitely think though it's great where if you actually do have something that you really enjoy doing that you don't want to stop, that's a rare thing.
Right.
So if that's definitely a reason why, then definitely more power to you for that, because that is something that a whole lot of people, I would say the majority of people in this world, cannot experience. So definitely great job.
For sure. On a side note, just because you mentioned Shigeru Miyamoto, it made me realize next year, 40th anniversary of Super Mario Brothers.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, at least of the original Famicom was 1985. So 40th anniversary next year. I'm sure there's going to be something big. I mean, with Super Mario Brothers being on the original Famicom, almost 40 years ago, that would mean that more likely than not, we'll see a 3D Mario game come in the first year of the Switch 2 or Super Switch or whatever it's called. That seems pretty likely. So
The new Nintendo Super Switch.
yeah. I hope they knock the naming out of the park. Super Switch would be the best, I think. But anyway, that's going off topic. So, yeah. But I don't really have anything else to add other than, the stuff that I already said. So, I'm glad for Yoshida-san that he's able to move on, and whatever he does, I'm sure he's going to do great. and help out some indie studios and all that. So good stuff.
Indeed.
All right. Any other thoughts on the topic?
No, sir.
All right. You want to talk about this 2K launcher situation?
Yeah. So recently, recently enough, 2K put out an announcement saying that on November 18th, which has happened already, the 2K launcher has been removed from every game that used it on Epic and Steam. Additionally, we have also removed the 2K launcher beta, a completely separate launcher from Sid Meier's Civilization 5. And they also put out a full page, a full sort of, I guess you could say, FAQ mentioning it. Also discussing like certain games that did have it, like Civ 6, Mafia Trilogy Definitive Edition, Civ 5, XCOM 2, XCOM Chimera Squad, and then also had some just basic FAQs. There wasn't, from what I could tell, a specific reason as to why they were removing it, but they decided to remove it. And, well, I mean, that's going to go into my thoughts, but now one thing that they'll say is that, like, you might have to try to close your games, or try closing the games and reopening the games, or also try reopening Steam as well, or I guess also Epic Game Store, just to remove the launcher. And then you could also possibly reboot your computer or uninstall and reinstall the game, so that way the launcher is completely removed. But from now on, those games, or any 2K games, you should be able to launch them without any sort of launcher whatsoever. So yeah.
Well,
what are your thoughts?
Yeah, my basic thoughts on this are it's great. I wish more game studios would do this for their things, to make it easier for people to just play their games without anything bogging it down, without having to have these extra launchers that slow down the process and just make it so you have to have one more thing installed. I want more developers to do this. I'm glad, looking at the list of games that they've done, particularly the BioShock games, I mean, those run great on modern hardware. They run great on the Steam Deck. And so from that standpoint, it's not really that big of an issue, but I certainly am not going to miss having those launchers, having that launcher as part of those games, because eventually I probably will go back to BioShock Remastered and finish replaying that. And, not having to deal with that launcher anymore, it's just one more thing to make performance even better. And thus make the experience even better. So fantastic. And hey, whenever you eventually get back to BioShock Remastered, because you got further along in your playthrough than I did in my sort of replaythrough, or the little bit that I played for recording the comparison, you won't have to deal with that launcher anymore. But
Indeed.
Yeah, that's all I have to say.
Yeah. Honestly, I don't even recall seeing the launcher, oddly enough. So, like, I'm very curious to know, like, what it...
Usually we just have, like, logging into 2K games, that sort of thing. I mean, like, I don't even think you had to create, like, a username. I think that it was just automatically done when you first booted up the game. Of course, I can't remember. Did you do BioShock through GOG or just through Steam?
I
guess it probably wouldn't make a difference either way.
I think I did it through Steam. I know I have it on both versions. Okay. I know I have it on both platforms, but I think I played it through Steam. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I played it through the Steam version.
Okay.
But yeah, this is definitely... I mean, I definitely agree that this is great news, not having to do this. I mean, it's one thing if you were playing the game through, like, officially through 2K's. I mean, do they even have sort of like their own sort of store fronts? I mean, if they did, that would be one thing, and having the launcher there is sort of expected. I feel like, I mean, of course, you sort of like need a launcher to run the game anyway, but that's one thing. But if you're playing a game through a different storefront, there's really no reason why you should have another launcher. Like, you should be able to launch the game through the launcher storefront you're using, and that's it. You shouldn't have to have something else running just to run the game. So it's definitely great news. And there's actually one funny thing here I see in the FAQ. It says, whoops. It says, can I still use the 2K launcher if I want to? We currently have no plans to allow an optional 2K launcher setting, but we appreciate your interest. Yeah, like, I want to know what person was actually.
I don't think anybody was asking that. I think it's just more like, this is a question that could be asked, so just in case, we're gonna answer it.
Yeah, although I feel like that's the type of question you would have from some sort of console fanboy who said, we should be forced to create an account to play these games. That's the way it should be done.
Or
and have a
console
launcher
fanboys that specifically want PC gamers to suffer because they hate us so much.
Oh man, but yeah, this is definitely great news. And I really hope that this is something that other publishers can take a page from, because it's really just a nuisance and annoying, just having to go through this. I mean, I think that having to make an account for some other service is possibly even worse than this, but no one really wants to just have to use another launcher to play a game when they're already launching a game through that one launcher, which is, in this case, Steam. It's just annoying. But of course, I really feel like, sort of like what you mentioned here is the GOG version probably doesn't have a launcher, since they said they only removed it for Steam and EGS. So I think it's safe to say that the GOG version didn't have in the first place, which I think is obviously great. And, now I guess every other storefront is getting sort of the definitive version, because, they don't have to, they're getting the version where you don't have to deal with that type of stuff. But definitely good news. And is Rockstar owned by 2K? Or is that another studio or another publisher there?
I don't remember, but either way, Rockstar has its own separate launcher.
Okay, because I was
they force you to use.
Okay, because I was wondering, I was like, I wonder if 2K could, if they owned Rockstar, I wonder if they could say, hey, oh no, they're owned by Take-Two, not 2K.
That's right. That's what it was.
Never mind. I'll say, hey, maybe you could speak to Rockstar or 2K and get them to not require that. But nope, that's out of the question. But hey, Take-Two, want to take a page out of 2K's book here? Maybe not. But either way, definitely great things here. Definitely sort of, it's good to sort of have this good news that's more pro-consumer stuff. Whether it's GOG working on making games more, be able to play on modern hardware, whether it's Valve trying to stand up for consumers, in the terms of season passes, or in the case of 2K, just removing a launcher. It's all good stuff here.
Indeed. All right. Anything else before we get into our recommendations and dissuasions?
No, sir.
All right, start us off.
All right, so my recommendations are going to be pretty much just some tips and tricks for facing the Organization 13 data boss fights. So I sort of mentioned this earlier, but the first tip I have is to use Stitch when you can and when necessary. As I mentioned before, Stitch is able to stun lock enemies, so if a boss is trying to just rush you and just unleash a slew of attacks, those attacks can be interrupted by Stitch, especially if you're at low health, because he will use his ability and that will just stun lock them, and that gives you time to, use a potion, grab any HP orbs that are being dropped, or just, use cure. It really gives you plenty of opportunities also just to recover. And in the case for a couple bosses, help find where the bosses are because of the fact that they could be hiding somewhere and you actually need to find out where they are. So Stitch is very useful. And even in other places in the game, like for example, if you're going through the Underworld tournament cups, he's very useful for helping you to get orbs. So that way you can sort of like get enough to complete the cups and also get the achievements and stuff. So Stitch is also useful there. In addition, for the boss fights, I also recommend using Reflect. Reflect is probably in my opinion, the second best spell in the game, other than Cure, for obvious reasons. But Reflect is perfect for blocking attacks from any direction, which helps for enemies that just like teleport and attack you from behind, or just also attacking from multiple angles at the same time, and also being able to just reflect damage back at them, which helps. It might even help break them out of a combo. So I really also recommend using Reflect as well. And then my last recommendation is to unequip the Berserk ability. That's something that you might automatically have either because you're trying to complete one of the other challenges, like for the Mushroom 13 fights, or if you're just trying to just like it in general and find it useful. It doesn't help for the data boss fights because of the fact that you can't defeat them or knock them out of a certain phase unless you're using a finishing attack. And Berserk allows you just to continuously use a combo without using a finishing attack until your HP bar recharges. So you can't necessarily finish a boss fight, which could leave you open to a counterattack and wipe you out, or you can't complete a certain phase of the boss fight because you can't land a finishing blow. So unequip the Berserk ability, and things should definitely help you a whole lot there. But yeah, those are my recommendations.
Good stuff. All right. Well, my recommendations, first of all, is that if you have to take apart some type of electronic and you're putting it back together, be careful when you're reassembling, especially to make sure that you don't have wires in areas where they're not supposed to be. Because if I had just put my smoker back together the first time completely correctly, I would have saved myself probably 2-3 hours of work. So, or well, maybe not so much work, but more just 2-3 hours of not being able to get anything done that was supposed to be done. So just be careful when you're putting things back together after you take them apart. Second thing is, this is something that we've been doing now for the past, I think this is our 4th year doing it. Our 4th year doing it. The night before Thanksgiving, especially if you are going to be cooking a lot of food on Thanksgiving, do yourself a favor and go out to eat or order something in that keeps you from having to cook anything extra the night before. What we have been doing the night before Thanksgiving since we moved here is we get IHOP. So first couple years we just went there and we sat down and got our individual meals. The last 2 years we decided instead to just get a family feast meal that comes with pancakes, sausage, bacon, eggs, and hash browns. It's something everybody likes. It has a little bit of everything. Nobody's forced to eat one thing. It's less money than buying individual meals. You don't have to worry about tips. And we don't have to sit in a restaurant where sometimes it is either too chilly or too warm. Instead, we can just be at home, eat what we want to eat, and then hang out afterward, at least apart from when we have other stuff to do. So, works out nicely. And then my final recommendation is when fighting Pontiff in Dark Souls 3, if you cannot get the parrying down, if you're as terrible at it as I am, and you don't have the patience, well, I say not even necessarily if you don't have the patience, if you just can't seem to figure out the parrying, dodge his attacks. Because dodging, for me at least, is much easier, and if you roll into him and you try to stay too close to his body as much as possible, You're going to have a much easier time on the fight, and you can save yourself a lot of time, a lot of headaches. And, I mean, obviously, if you can learn how to parry his attacks, learn how to parry his attacks, because that can be a much easier way to beat him for the average person. But if you're like me and you prefer dodging over parrying, because the parry window is just weird in Dark Souls compared to many other modern games, dodging is the way to go. So that is what I have for recommendations.
Very good. And I'll definitely make a note of your second recommendation for the future, because I think that definitely would help a whole lot, especially if you gotta make a lot of food the night beforehand.
Yeah. I mean, I've done enough of the prep ahead of time to where even though I still have to make several things on Thursday, most of them, like the significant part of them is already done. It's basically just putting things together. Like the cornbread stuffing, I have the cornbread made, the bacon's cooked and smoked and cooked. I chopped up the veggies that are going to go in there. So it's basically just throwing everything together, adding some chicken broth and a couple spices, mixing it all up and doing that. Oh, that reminds me, the other thing I'm doing that I forgot to mention is I'm making green bean casserole, which of course we love green bean casserole anyway, but I'm doing from scratch cream and mushroom soup. So because it's really easy to make and it's so much better in terms of ingredients and in terms of taste compared with the stuff you get out of a can. I can even just tell you real quick, it's super simple. So you start with the roux, add a can of evaporated milk, or I'm sorry, back up. First you saute mushrooms. You can do onions and garlic as well if you want, or you can just add powder to give some additional flavor later on. Saute those, pull them out. Then you do the roux, add a can of evaporated milk, stir that up, then add the mushrooms back in, stir that up, and then to thin it out and add additional flavor, you do either chicken, beef, or vegetable broth. And then you just stir it till it gets nice and thick, and then there you go. You have your cream and mushroom soup. Super easy, super delicious, and so much better than the garbage you get out of a can. Because the Campbell's soup, like, it tastes good, but the ingredients are just mortifying how bad they are. And the more conscious you are about that, which I have become super conscious about that, not that I'm like 100%, sometimes I just don't care, but like the more I can do that, the better, especially when I know how much better the real stuff tastes compared to using the canned stuff. So this will be my first time making green bean casserole that much from scratch, but I'm looking forward to it. I haven't even bothered trying to do like the French fried onions from scratch. I don't have that kind of patience. It's like, I mean, if I can find some that are fried in something better, then I definitely will try that in the future, but I don't care that much about it. It's more just like the cream and mushroom soup. I know how much better the homemade stuff is, and I think it's going to end up being really good. But yes, so the only thing I still have to make the cream and mushroom soup for that, but that doesn't take long. And then, mix it all together and bake it. And then I have to mash the potatoes, which are already cooked, but I use a potato ricer. If you've never used a potato ricer, that is the best way to mash potatoes because it is so much easier. They come out nice and smooth. You don't have to worry about chunks unless you just like the chunks. And it's so much easier. It's basically like it's like a hand press. So you put the potato in and you squish it down and it comes out like in strings of potatoes. And it's like super soft and everything instead of it being like, oh, you have to squish the potatoes. And even if you chop them up ahead of time, it's still just kind of a hassle sometimes. And this is an easy way to get them nice and smooth. So, but I think then, and the only other thing is just getting the turkey, out, stuffed, and in the smoker. I mean, I gotta make the crescent rolls in the morning, but the dough's already made. It just has to proof in the morning, which my wife will get up early to get it out of the fridge so it can proof, and then I will, or maybe out of the freezer to proof, and then I will roll them up or make up the sausage mixture and stuff the crescent rolls and cook them. So, anyway, I'm excited. But Thanksgiving is one of my favorite holidays because it is probably one of the most relaxing holidays, and it's fun because I get to do all this fun cooking that I basically only do once a year. So, yeah. Anyway, all right. Dissuasion or dissuasions.
My dissuasion's going to be if you are going to any sort of foreign country, don't be a jerk. Like, I feel like people are really just think that wherever they're going to is the same country as where they're at. And while there might be some similarities, there are definitely going to be some differences. So try to learn some of the culture that's there. So that way you either A, don't embarrass yourself, or B, just don't look like a complete jerk to the people who are there. So, I mean, even if you don't take the time to learn a little bit of the language, which could help you out while you're on your trip, at least just try to learn about what's acceptable and what's not acceptable, because that can help you out while you're there in the country. So yeah, definitely that's definitely my dissuasion there. Just don't be a jerk. Which I guess could really apply to a lot of just in general life.
All right. Well, my dissuasion, I didn't actually have anything written down because I forgot to write something down. I think I was just going back and forth on it. But my dissuasion is going to be don't let, and I think I actually said this last year too, don't let the holidays be a time of strife, especially Thanksgiving, when you're getting together with a bunch of family. I know that there are lots of families out there where, especially after this most recent election, that there's going to be some fighting. I mean, there are some members of family who voted for one side and some who voted for the other, and there can be negativity in either side for one reason or another, whether it's gloating or just anger because they don't like who was elected, what have you. But don't let that be the focus of your holiday. Even if you are someone who is not happy about the results of the election, or, whatever it may be, any other number of things that could potentially be divisive, just don't let these things get in the way of you enjoying your time with your family, because you don't know how much time you have with them. You never know when they're going to be gone, and you don't really want to leave. You don't want to make it so that the last thing that you said to a person was something negative. And then someone just dies and the last thing you said to them was negative. Unless you're just a cold-hearted person, you're probably going to regret it. So don't let these holidays go to waste when you have a chance to be with family. Take some time to enjoy things together. Do whatever you can to enjoy your time, and don't let your politics or religion or any other thing get in the way. Not to say that you can't discuss those things, but if you know it's a sore subject, it might be better to either not discuss it or come at it in such a way that it's not going to be something you argue over. So.
Very good.
All right. Where can people find you?
They can find me on my channel. I am Xeracon. That's IAMXCRACON. So youtube.com/@IamXeracon. Last video I put out was me discussing, coincidentally, some people who had been who have been jerks over in Japan, and just my thoughts on that, as well as the possible lasting impact that it has on tourists as a whole. So you can definitely check that out. I'm Not certain what the next video I'll be putting out is, but we'll see what happens.
All right. Well, you can find me on my gaming channel at the Frozen Gamer 87. There, of course, normally I will. Lately, it's basically just been putting up clips of the podcast each week, which some of those have been getting decent engagement. I mean, none of them are like anything impressive, but even double digits is good for that kind of stuff, because even that could potentially bring people to the podcast and just, get people a reason to talk about stuff, which is one of the reasons we do this. Is it's fun to talk about. So there's that. Eventually, I'll be putting out a comparison for Red Dead Redemption between the Switch and the Steam Deck OLED, but I haven't gotten to it yet just because I have not had time to record it, and when I've had time, I've been exhausted, too exhausted to do it. So we'll see if any of that happens this weekend. I'm going to say more likely than not, it is not going to happen this weekend, because I just don't think I'm going to have time for it. At this point, I'm aiming more for it to be something that I work on this coming week, and that I would have it up the second week of December. So not the 2nd, but the 9th. So the 9th of December is probably when I'll have that up, and hopefully I can start having those more consistently when I have a little more freedom in my schedule. Just right now, it's been crazy, especially with the holiday. But at least with all the stuff I had to do, most of it was stuff that it's like, okay, I do it once, and I either won't have to do it for a while, or I won't have to do it again at all because it's done. But anyway, that brings me to my YouTube cooking channel, Not Authentic But Delicious. I did just put out a recipe today. By the time you hear this, it will already have been out for a couple of days. Thanksgiving will already be over, but it is the recipe for a pumpkin roll, which is like I'm trying to think of how you describe it, but it's basically like I guess you could call it like a pumpkin spice cake, basically, but it's a thin rolled up cake that is stuffed with cream cheese frosting, and it's so good. So good. My wife has been making this pretty much since we first got married, and it doesn't always come out as pretty as it did this time, but for the most part, I think she's gotten the recipe down enough to where we don't really have issues with it, and it tastes so good. So good. So that is up right now. Next week will probably be, assuming I have the motivation to film it, which currently is my plan, it's going to be a Thanksgiving leftovers pizza that I'm hoping to make on on Friday, using some of our leftovers from Thanksgiving. But we'll see. That's the plan currently. It's just going to depend on how exhausted I am after Thanksgiving, which will depend on how much effort it takes for me to get all the cooking done, in addition to editing the podcast, which is going to have to get done in the morning. But yeah, so there's that. Of course, there is, for the podcast itself, we have the audio only version that is up on every major podcast platform. That is at 12 a.m. Central Time every Friday, barring any issues with uploads, which there's only been one time in recent where we had an issue with it. Somehow it just didn't get scheduled, so it didn't go up until a week late. But there's always, the video version also goes up on Fridays, normally at 7 a.m. Central Time, barring any issues with the upload. And that includes not only everything that you get in the audio version, which is us talking, as well as all the video game music that we use for the background, but also a chance to see our beautiful faces and any clips from games we've been playing, as well as clips from different types of things we're discussing, like trailers and that sort of thing for games, current systems, etc. So it's a good opportunity if you want to do any of that. And it's also a way to contact us. So you can comment on the video version of the podcast, which I guess I forgot to mention. on YouTube is at the Orange Box Podcast, and you can either contact us by commenting on the podcast. You can also reach out to us by emailing us theorangeboxpodcast@gmail.com or by sending us a tweet on X at theorangeboxpod, and we'll get back to you if you reach out to us. So far, we haven't gotten anything other than comments on the clips, but even if you never reach out to us, we're going to keep talking for 2.5 hours every week, because this is how we catch up from week to week, and it's a good outlet. So I believe that is everything. So last chance. Any final thoughts?
No, sir.
Well, I am the Frozen Gamer 87. That is I am Zaracon. We are the Orange Box Podcast. And until next time, don't get trampled in the stores and enjoy the time with your family. Orange Box Podcast.